Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Well, I want everybody to start planning ahead because there's a very good chance that on September 20th, not very far away, less than 3 months from now, this podcast may come abruptly to an end. Here's why. Over 165,000 people, by the way, welcome to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. More than 165,000 people have indicated that they are going to join an alien hunt at a classified U.S. Air Force base, according to a Facebook event titled Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. And more than 200,000 people, or 200,000 Facebook users, have reported themselves as interested. Now, this storming attempt is scheduled for September 20th, less than 3 months from now. According to the Facebook post, we will all meet up at the Area 51 Alien Center tourist attraction and coordinate our entry. If we Naruto run, we can move faster than their bullets. Let's see them aliens. Now, that's how they said it. That's not my grammar. That's their grammar. If we Naruto run, we can move faster than their bullets. Let's see them aliens. Apparently, the reference to Naruto is some anime character, Naruto Uzumaki, known for his very peculiar running style. But as some posts on the Facebook page suggest, the wannabe alien hunters may not be serious about their plans. They just want to have some fun trolling. At least one of the hosts' names, S, posting "cause I'm in shambles," hints that this could be one big joke. Now, the secret U.S. airbase, codenamed Area 51 in the state of Nevada, which, by the way, moi has been there, is reported to have undergone quite a few technical changes, including it's become a magnet for all kinds of conspiracy theorists and alien hunters for years. Now, back in the 1950s, the United States began testing a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, the U-2, Gary Powers. Anybody remember Gary Powers? There's a great cultural reference right there. How many people listening to this podcast know who Gary Powers is? How many know what a U-2 aircraft is? The government has admitted that it is a secret intelligence-related hub. They did so back in 2013 following a 2005 Freedom of Information Act request. Now think about that. You do a Freedom of Information Act request in 2005, and you finally get a response in 2013. 8 years. But hey, that's what it's going to take to get a hip surgery when we finally do Medicare for all. Yeah, it's 2019. I need a knee replacement. Okay, we can schedule that for 2027. The security regime around Area 51 hasn't scared off trespassers. Just last January, the local sheriff's office and the Nevada National Security Site, they shot a man who attempted to drive there in an unidentified cylindrical object, the British outlet Metro reports. September 20th. We'll have a Michael Brown Unplugged podcast gathering at Area 51. Be there. Be dead. I've often said on this podcast and on my radio program that identity politics is going to be the death of all of us. And that at some point, identity politics just causes, it's like a cancer. It begins to consume the living cells of the body. Well, it's now reached peak stupidity. NBC News. No, not the National Enquirer, not some tabloid at the King Soopers checkout line, but NBC News reports that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, that his great-great-grandfathers owned slaves. So at a press conference carried by C-SPAN, Mitch McConnell was asked, now that you have discovered that your great-great-grandfathers owned slaves, does that change your mind about reparations? You know, sometimes as much as I pick on Mitch McConnell, you got to give the guy at least some credit for a little bit of wit. After asked by some numbnut NBC reporterette, hey, now that you know that your great-great-grandfathers owned slaves, does that change your mind about reparations?
I find myself once again in the same position as President Obama. We both oppose reparations, and we both are the descendants of slaveholders.
Touche, Mitch McConnell. Touche. I think that was a great answer. But think about this. I mean, I always thought that, the sins of the father are never visited upon the son, blah, blah, blah. But are we really going to now? I mean, we are in full Orwellian mode. We're going to erase our history. We're going to erase anything that offends people. Hell's bells, we're going to erase anything that might offend somebody. I think this is all a big scam by 23andMe or Ancestry.com or any of the others who are just trying to get people to, I got to find the skeletons in my closet. I'm sure that if you dug into my closet, you'd find lots of skeletons. I don't know. Maybe there was a bank robber back in my great-great-grandfather days or something. Who knows? But if we're going to start going back and we're going to hold current generations, people living today, for what they had no connection to. Now, I knew both of my I take that back. I only knew one of my great-grandfathers. So if I didn't know any of my great-great-grandfathers, how can I be held accountable for any omission or commission that they may have engaged in? You can't. But that's what we're trying to do. We are now trying to disparage people's characters today based on something that their ancestors did. And that there might be a DNA connection. There might be some sort of genealogical connection, but there is no physical connection to what that person did. Now, I don't know whether I had a bank robber in my family or not, but let's just pretend for a moment that my great-great-grandfather robbed a Wells Fargo stage as it was going, across Indian territory, trying to make its way to California. And my great-great-grandfather was captured and somehow was held accountable, and he was strung up and hung till he died. Am I responsible for that? Does that make me any less or more of who I am today? Of course it doesn't. But this is a way to try to not only tear down people, but try to make people accountable for things that they have no accountability to. That's the essence of identity politics, right there in a nutshell. Touche, Senator McConnell. Touche. He struck again. I've been to Israel, and I've had the absolute horrific and mesmerizing experience of being up close to the Gaza Strip. And in fact, the last time I was there, it was not during this most recent campaign by Benjamin Netanyahu, but this was back in probably, I'm guessing, 2008, 2012 sometime. And Benjamin Netanyahu was running for election as prime minister. He had previously served, but he had been out of power for a while. And so we made a trip to the Gaza Strip, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and Mossad took us as close as they could so that we could witness and, through telescopes and through all these fantastic devices they had, that we could look down into the Strip, and you could actually see faces of people, and you could see what they were doing. But as you and I know, Israel turned over the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, and Hamas, of course, has taken over the control and the functioning of the Gaza Strip. But apparently Elizabeth Warren doesn't know that. She told a bunch of activists yesterday that she would push to end Israel's government occupation of the West Bank and of Gaza. There's a left-wing Jewish group, If Not Now, that posted a video on Twitter of two of its members approaching Warren for a photo at a campaign event in Peterborough, New Hampshire. The encounter went like this.
Hi, we're American Jews. We really love the way you're fighting corruption. We'd really love it if you also push the Israeli government to end the occupation.
Yes.
Excellent.
So I'm there.
Thank you.
So nice to see you. Here, let me get no.
And of course, then she just poses for the photograph because I don't think she really knew what to do. She kind of gave a fist bump, like, "Yeah, I'm all for that." You're all for what? Israel doesn't occupy Gaza. But hey, let's don't let facts get in the facts. I mean, come on. Did I tell you about my grandfather who was a bank robber? Did you know that Mitch McConnell's great-great-grandfather was a slave owner? Yep. Man, oh man, we are just, the country's just becoming nothing but a country of dumbasses. And speaking of dumbasses, I don't know why I'm finding all this stuff funny this morning, but it just, so the resident concentration camp expert, I mean, come on, who is America's resident or Congress's resident concentration camp expert? That's right, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Well, she went on Twitter to quote favorably the First Lady of the Peron regime, which actually harbored Nazi war criminals, including Holocaust architect Adolf Eichmann and the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele. She quoted Evita Peron, quote, "I know that, like every woman of the people, I have more strength than I appear to have." I think they just can't hide their fascination, their inherent fascination with fascism. And I think they're actually proud of it. It was bad enough that she's been trivializing, I can't even talk this morning. She's been trivializing the Holocaust by likening the detention facilities along the southern border to Nazi death camps. But then she actually favorably compares herself to Nazi sympathizer Eva Peron. Shall we go for the spitting on the memories of Holocaust victims trifecta? Let's do it. With some help from her chief of staff, Sakit Chakrabarti, who on, this would have been Monday, tweeted out, "Since I've only lost 8 followers for pointing out who the Justice Democrats are, I thought, well, quote, F it." And he tweeted out a picture of Adolf Hitler. That's a really nice shirt he has on, too, which, of course, he has a picture of Hitler. I just don't understand what their fascination is with Nazism or with fascism. Now, it's clear when you look at her chief of staff, he's wearing a T-shirt with Subhash Chandra Bose on it. That's the Indian nationalist whose plan for fighting British colonialism involved, well, sucking up to Hitler. And he's quite proud of that. In fact, he's so proud of it that, well, I only lost 8 followers, so heck with it. I'm going to post a picture of Hitler and I'm going to post a picture of a Nazi sympathizer and screw it. I just don't care. And they don't care. Because you know why? If you're going to somehow telegraph to others that, well, you're really cool, you're edgy. You know, I think we've now gone from Che Guevara T-shirts that now we're going to start having Hitler T-shirts. If you're going to be that edgy, you can't exactly go around wearing the faces of people who never did anything wrong, according to Alex Griswold. Because in case it's not clear, the chief of staff is wearing a T-shirt with that Indian nationalist on it. There's no getting around it. I mean, I'm sitting here staring at the picture right now, but they don't care. I guess they openly admire Hitler and Nazi sympathizers. I don't know. Well, I do know. I'm going to say it. I just hope Tamara doesn't hear it. This is an example of where public education has woefully failed this republic. If you don't understand what Nazism is, if you don't understand the horrors of fascism and communism, if you don't understand the horrors of tyranny and the millions of people that have been killed under fascist and communist regimes, then you're going to be proudly wearing a Hitler T-shirt or Che Che Guevara t-shirt. And you're not going to think anything about it. And in fact, you're going to openly be proud that you are doing it because you might happen to be a useful idiot. Billionaire Tom Steyer has entered the Democrat presidential race. I suppose he figures, hey, I meet the qualifications. I've got the money and I've got the polling numbers and I've got the money. It's going to be fascinating to watch Tom Steyer on the debate stage because he really is, even though he's totally in on climate change and global warming and global cooling and everything else. He's probably totally in on the Green New Deal. But when you think about it, I think he's running for president, one, because he wants to impeach Donald Trump, which I don't understand why he thinks that being president somehow empowers him to impeach. Because if he think this through, hey, I think I'll run for president. Why? Well, because I want to impeach Donald Trump. Well, if you win, then Donald Trump is no longer the president, and so he's no longer subject to impeachment. He may be subject to criminal matters, but he's not going to be subject to impeachment. Oh, well, I'm running because I want to do penance for the way I earned my money. This is where it's going to be great because Tom Steyer earned his money on Wall Street and in the coal industry. And now he wants to do the Green New Deal. So now he's going to be up against all, the Elizabeth Warrens and the Joe Bidens and everybody else and the Bernie Sanders. Are they going to attack him because now you have a billionaire on stage, a billionaire that made his money not from Green New Deals, but from the coal industry, from evil Wall Street? Oh, baby, get me the popcorn. Get me the popcorn. I don't want to talk a lot about the Jeffrey Epstein case, but I do want to give you a little bit of nugget to chew on between now and as this story develops. Chuck Schumer went to the well of the Senate to call on Labor Secretary Acosta to resign, Alexander Acosta. He used to be a U.S. attorney in Florida, and he originally had the Jeffrey Epstein case in Florida.
This is not acceptable. We cannot have, as one of the leading appointed officials in America, someone who has done this. Plain and simple. Second, I am calling on the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility to make public the results of its review of Acosta's handling of the Epstein case. Senators Murray and Kaine have called for these findings, but the Justice Department so far has stonewalled, has refused to make them public. This review cannot be kept in the dark, particularly given the new revelations, and there should be hearings.
Oh, I don't care about hearings. I do care about, I want it revealed that that Alexander Acosta in the Jeffrey Epstein case was not the one that gave Jeffrey Epstein that sweetheart deal where he served, I think, 13 months in a county jail or something. No. What the news media is not reporting to you is that Alexander Acosta, then the U.S. attorney, was overruled by the United States Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. They are the ones that forced Acosta to go with that plea deal. And but for some legal maneuvering that Alexander Acosta did, Jeffrey Epstein would not be charged today. But he left a door open because he was opposed to the deal that was being forced upon him by the Department of Justice in Washington. I keep turning him around. Alexander Acosta was doing everything he could to hold Epstein accountable. It was the Department of Justice that forced that deal. So when you hear Schumer, Pelosi, or anybody else demanding that Acosta resign, just remember you heard it here. That's not the full story. The full story is Acosta was doing everything he could to hold Epstein accountable, but the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. were tying his hands. Yeah, I want that truth to come out. You know, people can argue day in and day out about President Trump and his compulsive tweeting. Sometimes I think he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's trolling Democrats, and he's trolling the media, and sometimes he's trolling Republicans. Other times I think he's just, well, in kind of a strange way, I think maybe he might be drunk tweeting, even though I know he doesn't drink. But a lot of his advisors and other members of the Republican Party have urged him in the past to try to refrain from using Twitter, but he persists. Now, after about 2.5 years of this president tweeting about, well, just about anything that pops into his head, we all know he's not just tweeting about innocuous things like, the stupidity going on in D.C. He actually tweets about global events, his agenda, policies. He issues warnings to foreign leaders. Sometimes he engages in games of one-upmanship with thug dictators, and of course that drives the media crazy. He attacks the media. He attacks members of the media. He attacks Democrats. He attacks Republicans. He attacks anything. It's actually kind of hilarious. And the voluminous amount of tweeting about so many issues open him up to, well, everything from condemnation to ridicule to foul comments to praise to, just absolute, this is the most wonderful thing ever. Well, today, or I shouldn't say today, yesterday, the U.S. Court of Appeals said that Trump violated the Constitution, calling it, are you ready for this? Unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination. The court, according to this story, U.S. President Donald Trump violated the Constitution by blocking people whose views he disliked from his Twitter account. In a 3-0 decision, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan said that the First Amendment, now I want you to think through this for a moment. In a 3-0 decision, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan said that the First Amendment forbids Trump from using Twitter's blocking function to limit access to his account. Last I checked, he has about 62 million followers. The court said, quote, the First Amendment does not permit a public official who utilizes a social media account for all manner of official purposes to exclude persons from an otherwise open online dialogue because they expressed views with which the official disagrees. Now, that decision upheld a ruling from May of last year by U.S. District Judge Naomi Rice Buchwald in Manhattan, which prompted Trump to unblock some accounts. The Justice Department has called her ruling fundamentally misconceived, saying that Trump used Twitter to express his views, not to offer a public forum for discussion. But the judge said that Trump's account bears, quote, all the trappings of an official state-run account and is one of the White House's main vehicles for conducting official business. Now, last year, the Justice Department argued that the ruling was fundamentally misconceived and that since becoming president, Trump was simply continuing to use his personal Twitter account in the same way that he always had, sharing his thoughts about the views about any number of topics. But the Justice Department also asserted that President Trump belonged to him in his personal capacity and not the control of the government. Thus, when he exercises the power enjoyed by all Twitter users to block other users from their own accounts, he is not using any authority belonging to or conferred on him by the federal government. I agree with that. Why do I agree with that? Because there is an official at POTUS account. This is the same personal account that he carried over and continued to use once he became president. He still uses the POTUS account. The White House still uses that. And if the Court of Appeals wanted to say that, well, you can't block people from seeing what's on the official account, I'd have no problem with that. But this is his personal account. But then let's think about viewpoint discrimination. If it is wrong, just for the sake of argument, if it is wrong for the president to block somebody because he doesn't like what their political view is, wouldn't that same rule apply to Twitter? When Twitter says, wait a minute. We're not going to allow you on our platform because we disagree with what you say. Aren't they engaged in viewpoint discrimination? I'll keep following the case because I'm really curious what other legal not that I'm a legal scholar, but what other legal scholars might say about this case, because I'm absolutely convinced that just because he continued to use a personal Twitter account once he became president, that somehow took on some sort of official clothing. I don't think it does. And it raises great First Amendment questions. Stay tuned. And in the latest case of virtue signaling, they would even have us stop washing our clothes. Apparently, according to fashion designer Stella McCartney, quote, basically in life, the rule of thumb is this. If you don't absolutely have to clean anything, don't clean it. Now, I don't know. I'm thinking I'm sitting here and I got my jeans and shirts on, and I suppose you're supposed to let the dirt dry and you just brush it off. But I get that. And I'm not one of these guys that washes my Levi's, my blue jeans all the time. I do actually let them go for a week or two before I wash them, simply because I've been taught over the years that that's what you're supposed to do with denim. But if you have stains, if you have smell, you have bacteria, if all you're doing is letting the dirt dry and brushing it off, that's just virtue signaling regarding the environment. So there's this woman, Laura Diaz-Sanchez. She's from the Plastic Soup Foundation Advocacy Group. Yeah, the Plastic Soup Foundation Advocacy Group. Anyway, she concurs that washing clothes is bad. She says this: every time we wash our clothes, an average of 9 million plastic microfibers are released into the environment, according to BBC News. The way we wash our clothes affects this, as well as the way our clothes are made. But the more we wash our clothes, the more microfibers are released. You know, I got a microfiber right here. I don't know. It begs the question. It begs the question whether a microfiber is as heinous as a microaggression. Somebody needs to study that, because, you know, in our rules of what we can say and not say, what we can virtue signal and not virtue signal, what we can identify as, not identify as, somebody needs to let me know whether a microfiber is as bad as a microaggression, or micro anything for that matter. Now, Chip Berg, who is the CEO of Levi's, says that you should never wash your jeans, but instead you should put them in a freezer, I guess in some sort of scientifically misguided attempt to kill the germs that collect and cause the smells. But here's what I don't understand. So you freeze something. That freezes the bacteria. That makes the bacteria temporarily dormant, doesn't it? So if you put your jeans, maybe I'll try this. I'll put my jeans in the freezer in just a minute, and then I'll report back tomorrow. But here's what I keep thinking. If you put your jeans in the freezer, first of all, I'm going to get in trouble because Tamara's going to go get a steak or something out of the freezer, and then I'm going to be in trouble. Like, what are your jeans doing in here? But I thought freezing just froze the bacteria, and the bacteria became temporarily dormant. So then when I thaw my jeans out, whatever bacteria was causing the stain or the odor or the microaggression, doesn't that bacteria then again become active, and the stains come back and the smell comes back? I swear, trying to keep up with how you're supposed to live your life these days is absolutely, well, it's just mind-boggling. If you live by this environmental wacko nut job stuff, here's what it's going to lead to. In Great Britain, Elena Struthers Gardner has been killed by her own eco-straw. Story goes like this. A retired jockey died when she fell onto an eco-friendly metal drinking straw that went through her eye, impaled her brain, according to an inquest that occurred earlier this week. Elena Struthers Gardner, age 60, suffered horrific brain injuries after the freak accident at her home in Broadstone in Poole, Dorset on November 22nd. The 10-inch straw was fixed in place in a mason jar with a screwed-on lid, making it a deadly weapon. You could have attacked somebody with it, and you could have been charged with assault with a deadly weapon. But I think we're supposed to be, here's what I think. I think what we're supposed to do is to use inconvenient and potentially unhygienic metal straws, because the plastic straws have been condemned as being offensive to the environment. So if you want to do real, true virtue signaling, people like Van Jones are going to tell you with a straight face that Americans throw away, 500 million straws every single day. Remember that number that was fabricated by some 9-year-old rug rat? Well, a lot of the straws are actually eaten by sea creatures, displacing their innards so that their insides consist of nothing but discarded straws. No, I actually learned that. I learned that by reading a story about a woman in Santa Barbara where she says that providing customers with drinking straws has been made punishable with jail time. I actually now make it a game. I prefer to use a straw regardless. But if I go to a restaurant and they don't offer a straw, I'll wait till they bring the drinks, and then I'll ask for a straw. You see, I'm kind of apparently passive-aggressive that way. Offer me the straw to begin with. Now, Britain banned plastic straws, effective sometime next spring. And I think some people might suspect that the metal straw wasn't primarily responsible for this woman's demise. They might suspect vodka. And why do I say that? Because in the months leading up to her death, she had been drinking around a half a liter of vodka every single day, mixed with orange juice, from that very same mason jar cup, using the very same metal straw, which was given to her as a birthday gift. But the coroner, no. The coroner would not say that alcohol contributed to the fall. The coroner wrote, due to severe pain from a riding accident which caused multiple fractures to Ms. Strother Gardner's lumbar spine and caused scoliosis, she was prone to falling over, collapsing, quote, like a sack of potatoes at random intervals, her wife added. Yeah, I said her wife. You see, reading a statement to the inquest, Robin Struthers, Ms. Strother Gardner's brother, called for the coroner to comment on how easy it is to purchase metal straws, adding, these straws can very easily be lethal. I think I know what comes next after the British ban knives. Knives, metal straws. Paper straws can be dangerous too. You and I know that the issue is never really the issue. The issue is always the revolution. And by the revolution, I mean absolute power for those that are on the left, the fascists, the Marxists, those who want to control every aspect of our lives. Democrat politicians posture theatrically as the promoters of black interests, with a presidential candidate even promising, Kamala Harris, promising $100 billion for explicitly black housing assistance at everybody else's expense. But here's the truth. Democrats are not really interested in promoting advancement for blacks. And the same goes for the NAACP, even if that does stand for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Otherwise, all of these leftist institutions would not oppose school choice. According to the Washington Examiner, our current public education system fails too many minority children, leaving them trapped in failing public schools. But bizarrely, the national leadership of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, arguably the country's most preeminent African-American advocacy group, has called for an outright ban on charter schools. And of course, Senator Bernie Sanders, Socialist Vermont, has actually rolled out an education plan that would severely restrict charter schools as well. And I think most blacks realize that if they want to work their way up rather than begging for crumbs from the socialist demagogues on the left, they need access to better schools. The Washington Examiner continues that nearly 7 in 10 African Americans polled say they support school choice. And I think it's easy to see why, with countless studies showing that educational freedom improves outcomes for non-white students, And research also shows that school choice programs reduce crime, it reduces teen pregnancy, and it increases graduation rates, and it increases civic engagement. Now we understand exactly why, when we talk about these black advocacy groups, the race baiters, wanting to keep blacks on the plantation, that's exactly why. Are they truly interested in reducing crime or teen pregnancy or increasing graduation rates or increasing civic engagement? Because if you do all of those things, that means people are getting smarter, more intellectual, they understand more about what's going on in the world around them, and they're going to reject the plantation. So all of those things and drug use are actually the real scourges of the black community, not these stupid microaggressions that we laugh about, or all of the imaginary discrimination that everybody bleats about all the time. But charter schools actually lessen the power of the teachers' unions, which, of course, is another lefty institution and a very important institution for inculcating all of this dumbassery that we keep reading about. And here's the other bottom line. And this is what really, I think this probably bothers me more than anything else. Keeping black people ignorant, helpless, keeping black people poor, maintains a voting bloc that Democrats can count on with 90% reliability. So, what do you have to do? You got to crush school choice. Now, back in the 19th century, in the 1800s, Democrats didn't want blacks to learn how to read. Things have changed less than some think. And regarding that voting bloc that Democrats can count on with 90% reliability, I think that's why you don't hear anything in the mainstream media about how black unemployment is at all-time lows and that black labor participation rates are at all-time highs. You don't hear anything about that because if Donald Trump, Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, anybody right of center is able to peel off 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10% of the black vote, Democrats are going to lose. And so Democrats are going to do every single thing they can to keep blacks on the plantation. And the news that we can use, if you're like me and you love raw cookie dough, we actually have more options than ever before. You can now visit cafes that sell cookie dough by the scoopful, or you can make your own safe-to-eat cookie dough at home. But the classic, the best, store-bought cookie dough packages have remained off limits because the CDC and all the other government agencies will tell you, oh, you can't eat that raw cookie dough because, well, it's going to kill you. But, oh, man, it's good, right? Well, apparently, according to the website Thrillist, Nestle is now going to sell pre-made cookie dough that's meant to be eaten unbaked. This is why America is the greatest place, the greatest civilization in the history of mankind. The edible cookie dough tubs, and who wouldn't want cookie dough to come in any other way except a tub? I need a tub of cookie dough. 2 flavors, chocolate chip, see, all American. That's modeled after the original Nestle Toll House recipe. And, of course, they'd have peanut butter chocolate chip monster. That just sounds awful to me. If I want peanut butter and chocolate together, I'll get a Reese's cup. But both products include the ingredients that make raw cookie dough irresistible. Real butter, real chocolate, but they leave out the components that could make consumers sick, like raw eggs. So the recipe was genetic engineering. The recipe, according to the Thrillist website, was engineered to be spooned straight from the container and eaten as is, so shaping the dough into cookies and baking is actually not recommended. Oh, this is America. In a news release, Nestle Toll House Associate Brand Manager Christina Chandler said, quote, "We wanted to bring the experience of eating cookie dough straight from the mixer to consumers in a safe and convenient way." Sidebar here. Just can I do a little parenthetical real quickly? All the problems that we face. You think of, I don't care, climate change, racism, sexism, whatever phobias you face, whatever technological hurdles we're trying to overcome. Just give it time. Because if we can come up with cookie dough that's in a tub, that's safe to eat, we can do anything. Now, despite how common it is, and you know it's common because you've done it too, to sneak a bite of cookie dough before sticking it in the oven, the Centers for Disease Control makes it clear that that is a dangerous practice. Cookie dough, they say, not only contains raw eggs, which could carry salmonella, but also raw flour, which could potentially harbor E. coli. I like how it could carry salmonella, and it could potentially harbor E. coli. Not that it does, but it could. But I could also get in the car, and somebody could rear end me. Just this past June, flour sold at Aldi and Walmart was recalled because of E. coli concerns. I love the language. E. coli, not that there was E. coli, but there were E. coli concerns. Now, the 15-ounce tubs of the edible cookie dough are now available at Publix supermarkets in the refrigerated section, and then Nestle's going to roll out their product in Meijer, select Walmart stores, and select regional grocery chains throughout July of this year. That's the good news of the day. Just get me a tub of cookie dough, and I'll podcast all day long. I don't do this a lot. In fact, on radio, I rarely did it. But Prager University, does these fantastic short-form videos where they'll take a topic and they'll condense it into a generally less than 10-minute, most of the time about a 4 to 5-minute video, answering a question of the day. Well, they've done one recently that I think is fantastic, and because I've got a podcast and I don't have to worry about a clock and I can just do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it, I want to play this entire video. So sit back, relax, and ask yourself the question, was Jesus a socialist?
Socialist? Well, if socialism is nothing more than being kind to other people, then you might think the answer is yes. But you could be kind to other people and be a capitalist. John D. Rockefeller probably gave away more money than anyone in human history, and he was certainly a capitalist. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have given away millions, too. To get an accurate answer to our question, we need to define socialism. Socialism is the concentration of power into the hands of government elites to achieve the following purposes: central planning of the economy and the radical redistribution of wealth. Jesus never called for any of that. Nowhere in the New Testament does he advocate for the government to punish the rich or even to use tax money to help the poor. Nor does he promote the ideas of state ownership of businesses or central planning of the economy. In Luke 12, Jesus is confronted by a man who wants him to redistribute wealth. "Master," the man says to Jesus, "tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replies, "Man, who made me a judge or divider over you?" And then he rebukes the man for being envious of his sibling. How about Jesus' parable of the talents? Talents were a form of money in Jesus' day. A man entrusted 3 of his workers with his wealth. The 2 who invested the money and made a profit were praised, and the one who buried his share so he wouldn't lose any of it was reprimanded. Sounds a lot more like an endorsement for capitalism than socialism, doesn't it? Yes, Jesus spoke of the difficulty for a rich man to enter heaven, but not because having money is evil. It's not money, rather it is the love of money, the New Testament tells us, that leads to evil. Jesus was warning us not to put acquisition of money and material possessions above our spiritual and moral lives. Was Jesus promoting a socialist model when he kicked the money changers out of the temple in Jerusalem? Again, the answer is no. Note the location where the incident occurred. It was in the holiest of places, God's house. Jesus was not angry at buying and selling in and of themselves. He was angry that these things happened in a house of prayer. He never drove a money changer from a marketplace or from a bank. Jesus advises us to be of generous spirit, to show kindness, to assist the widow and the orphan. But he clearly means this to be our responsibility, not the government's. Consider Jesus' Good Samaritan story. A traveler comes upon a man at the side of a road. The man had been beaten and robbed and left half dead. What did the traveler, the Good Samaritan, do? He helps the unfortunate man on the spot with his own resources. Ask yourself, to help the poor, would Jesus prefer that you give your money freely to the Salvation Army, for example, or have it taxed by politicians to fund a welfare bureaucracy? Progressives like to point out that Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." But that has absolutely nothing to do with high taxes or wealth redistribution. It was the seed for the idea of separating church and state. It certainly wasn't the same as saying that whatever Caesar says is his must then be so, no matter how much he demands or what he intends to use it for. So there is no evidence that Jesus was a socialist, and there's lots of evidence that he supported free markets. In addition to the parable of the talents, Jesus offers his parable of the workers in the vineyard. In it, a landowner hires some laborers to pick grapes. Near the end of the day, he realizes he needs more workers to get the job done. To recruit them, he agrees to pay a full day's wage for just 1 hour of work. When one of the laborers who had worked an entire day complains, the landowner answers, "I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money?" That's a testament to the principles of supply and demand, of private property, and of voluntary contracts, not socialism. Jesus never endorsed the forced redistribution of wealth. That idea is rooted in envy, something that he and the 10th of the 10 Commandments railed against. Most importantly, Jesus cared about helping the less fortunate. He never would have approved anything that undermines wealth creation. And the only thing that has ever created wealth and lifted masses of people out of poverty is free market capitalism. Read the New Testament. The plain meaning of the text is loud and clear. Jesus was not a socialist. He couldn't be. He loved people, not the state. I'm Lawrence Reed, president of the Foundation for Economic Education for Prager University.
I think that is a fantastic video. And if you're not familiar with the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org, you really should go to it because they always have incredible, just putting in the most basic, simple layman's terms, good economic principles. So that if you're having a debate with somebody and you're struggling for exactly how to explain why capitalism works or why redistribution of wealth is bad, why the bureaucracy eats up, the tax dollars that you spend that go to Medicare or Medicaid, how those dollars get wasted in the bureaucracy and the program offices, go study fee. Go to the website, fee.org, and take a look at it. Incredible information. So no, Jesus wasn't a socialist. So far, I'm trying to think over the past several days, over the 4th of July holiday and the weekend and the past couple of days, we've had all these stories of the story of the guy that walked into the barbecue place in D.C., saw a couple at the bar, one of whom had on a Make America Great hat. The story of the cops in the Starbucks in, I think it was in Tempe, Arizona. We have all these really bizarre encounters where there's absolutely zero tolerance from those on the left who seem to think that tolerance was like the epitome of wokeness. Well, the bottom line is you don't have to be friends with anyone. But if you're going to be friends with someone, you should probably meet them where they stand. If you're going to be friends with someone, you should actually accept them as they are and not try to change them. Now, if I want to put a asterisk on that, if you're friends with somebody and they have a horrible addiction problem, yeah, I think you should try to help them deal with their addiction problem. But the point I'm trying to make is true friends accept other friends for just being who they are. Well, Zach Ford, who is a writer for Think Progress and a wokeist extraordinaire, he thinks so much of his friendship that he gave one of his old friends an ultimatum. It was either their friendship or his friend's Make America Great Again hat. So what would you do? If you were in this situation and someone came to you and said, "Look, Michael, I like you, you're my friend, but you got one of those stupid Make America Great Again hats, and it's either the hat or our friendship," I know what I would do. I would say, well, I'm sorry, if that is the demarcation line for our friendship, then I don't think there's a friendship. So in the case I just told you about, where Zach Ford, the Think Progress writer, gave his friend the ultimatum, the friendship or the hat, the friend chose the hat. And Zach Ford was offended. But the bottom line is the friend was right, and Ford is just an ass. Zach Ford tweeted out on last Friday, surprise, I still put together an LGBTQ newsletter for today to round out the week. Today's issue, rewriting history to justify discrimination, Border Patrol homophobia, penguins, and some personal thoughts on MAGA hats. Specifically, he wrote, I share a story in today's newsletter about my decision to unfriend someone that I have known since high school over her decision to wear a MAGA hat. I gave her a choice, and she chose the hat over me. Now, this whole story came to light if you follow Think Progress and some of these lefty websites, which I would encourage you to do. You really need to understand what the other side is thinking. Well, he does a newsletter called Fording the River Styx. And he wrote about the incident, and he was actually writing about it with I think, self-congratulation at his fortitude in standing up to, well, getting rid of an old friend. The story goes that an old friend of his from high school appeared on his feed wearing a MAGA hat while holding her baby daughter. Now, I looked at the picture. In fact, I'm looking at the picture right now. It has kind of this wholesome feel to it. The hat is like secondary, third. It's a tertiary kind of, you don't even think about the hat. You see this mother holding a baby daughter. That's what they should be thinking about. Well, anyway, Zach Ford reached out to his friend, who is an evangelical Christian, to explain to her just how damaging her hat was. He wrote, seeing her proudly wearing a MAGA hat in public, and with her daughter no less, violated this accord deeply. It's not just a hat. It's a symbol of all of the oppression and all of the injustice the Trump administration is responsible for. It's an endorsement of caging kids, banning Muslims, firing trans people, and dozens of other ways Trump has undermined our democracy. You know that ticks me off, but I'll let it go. Up to and including the fascist military display that graced the National Mall last night. More than anything, MAGA represents the idea that some human lives are worth more than others. Seriously? How does Make America Great Again represent that some human lives are worth more than other lives? When we get to the point that we're quibbling over symbols for which the meaning to one person and the meaning to another person can differ so drastically, it's really no wonder that we can't have lasting friendships. The hat as a symbol to the friend and as a symbol to Ford don't have any similarity. Whether you like the hat or not, it's a hat. To some people, it might be fashion. To some, it might mean something entirely different. It all depends on the eye of the beholder. But if this clown really believes that Make America Great Again somehow, quote, represents the idea that some human lives are worth more than others, he's probably okay with the concept, just not how he believes it's here applied. Now, he was pretty vocal about the whole bakers having to decorate cakes even if they didn't want to, because presumably the customer's right to their beliefs is more important than the baker's right to their beliefs. He continued in his newsletter, I explained all this to my old friend. To those inclined to reject the humanity of any particular group, a MAGA hat is a symbol of affirmation, license and encouragement to continue holding those beliefs. To members of those many rejected groups, he says, it's a threat, a warning that such prejudice is welcome in that person's vicinity and may come from them directly. But that's unacceptable to me, to be subjected to that symbol from someone whom I hypothetically have mutual trust. All from wearing a hat? I know that friendships, I know that back when Trump was running and we were going through the Republican primary back in 2015. Listeners to my radio program were really upset with me because I kind of bounced from candidate to candidate to candidate. And I came to the Trump train late to the game. And I freely admit that in hindsight, he's far exceeded my expectations. But I can't think of anyone that I had a disagreement with about Trump in the beginning that I lost a friendship over. If you're losing friendships over politics, I understand that at some point, I truly do understand this, that at some point it just becomes so wearisome. It becomes just so depressing that if somebody is just so intractable, if they are just so adamant that they're not going to, okay, what's the old saying? We'll just agree to disagree. If we can't do that anymore, we really have lost our humanity. Righteousness is not the answer. It literally never is. Righteousness is itself intolerant. The problem with the demand for an apology all the time is that in this era of just this constant hand-wringing and mea culpas for every little infraction, apologies, they're all meaningless. Not only do they not represent an actual repentance, they're not treated as such. Apologies are simply considered evidence of guilt. They're not considered a path toward repentance or changing one's behavior. You know, if anyone, I always appreciated people that would come up to me and say, you know, I've listened to you for years, and I agree with you 90% of the time. I always kind of chuckle inside because I think, well, that's more than I would have expected. Because I'm pretty open about what I believe, how I feel, kind of what's going on in my life. I'm pretty open about all of that stuff. And I'm that way because of all of the life experiences that I've been through. I really don't care. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I don't care if you agree with me or not. Now, if Tam and I disagree about something, and it has to do with family or lifestyle or something else, yes, we need to compromise. We need to work that out. But for friendships to dissolve over politics or something as innocuous as a hat, there's really something wrong with us. Truly something wrong with us. If we're going to go around policing what other people wear and then claim to not police their beliefs, what Zach Ford was doing was he was assessing her value according to his perceived tenets of her stated religion. I bet if he was to dig a little bit deeper, he would find that the concept of loving thy neighbor is not about judging people for not loving you, but about you, yourself, actually loving others. Breaking up a friendship over a hat. Stop it. Just stop it. Let's get a taxpayer relief shot in. This one comes to us from KPRC, Channel 2, Houston, Texas.
Harris County, police say a man was shot and killed during an attempted robbery.
It happened just before 1 in the morning on Trevor Way and Paramount Lane in Spring. That's where we find Channel 2's Vincent Crivelli this morning, gathering more details. Vincent?
Oh, and Haley, good morning. It appears two bad guys tried to rob the wrong person. Instead of getting cash, one robber got bullets. The other is still on the run. Flashing lights in a search for evidence outside the La Mancera apartment complex in North Harris County.
Deputies responded to a shooting here on the 22800 block of Trevor Way.
Authorities say there was a gun battle here around 1 o'clock this morning between two robbers and a man who had just parked his truck here.
Victims were saying that the two black males approached him while he was getting out of his truck.
Gunfire erupted. You can see evidence markers to the left and to the right of the truck. Authorities say one of the robbers took off running. The other was shot and rushed to the hospital,
where he was pronounced deceased from his wound.
Deputies say the robbery victim was shot in his leg, and family members took him to the hospital. He's expected to be okay.
We're still a very active scene right now. We're still combing the area for more evidence.
And the crime scene spans about a block, as investigators just mentioned. They're still searching for clues. Also, authorities are still searching for that second suspect. They say the man is in his early 20s, who is wearing a gray sweatshirt and white shorts. Now, of course, if you have any information on this suspect, please call authorities. For now, reporting live.
Yep. Don't go robbing people at, dark 30. This next one comes to us. This is so bizarre. This comes to us from Chicago. A kidnapping suspect was shot and killed by the Chicago Popo after an off-duty officer encountered two people in handcuffs running. A kidnapping suspect was shot and killed by Chicago Popo after an off-duty officer encountered two people in handcuffs on the northwest side Monday morning. At about 6:46 a.m., Chicago Police Sergeant Cindy Guerrera said an off-duty officer encountered a male victim and a female victim handcuffed together, saying they had been kidnapped. The off-duty officer called the Popo, and officers responded to an apartment. Guerrera said there was an armed confrontation in the apartment with a 41-year-old man, and an officer fired, hitting the suspect. The suspect was transported to Illinois Masonic Hospital in critical condition, where he later died. No officers were injured. A weapon was recovered at the scene. The police said the victim showed no signs of abuse, and it is not known how long they were being held. But they apparently saw a chance to escape early Monday and took off running toward a nearby store. Now, the cops aren't sure why the two people were kidnapped, but said the victims and their alleged kidnapper apparently knew each other. The spokesperson for the cops said, "At this time, we believe that it didn't happen here, that it happened in a surrounding suburb and ended up here, but that's all I'm able to tell you at this time." Imagine that. Two people running down the street handcuffed together. You're off duty. What the hell's going on? So thanks for listening to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. You know the drill. Subscribe to us on the iHeart app. Go to iTunes. If you go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating if you can. If you got time, write a review, because that really helps get the word out. And then follow us on all of the social media platforms. And the easiest way to do that, michaelbrowntoday.com. All you have to do, just go to michaelbrowntoday.com, click on those social media icons, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of them right there. And I'll talk to you again tomorrow.